Welcome, welcome. We're just waiting for a couple of more people to join the session. We've got about 61 people and it's climbing quite quickly. So maybe while we wait for more people to join, I hope you guys are feeling pumped and ready for the session. My name's Alex Hansen and I'm the events coordinator at OfferZen. And I'm just going to be leading you guys through the initial welcome and just explaining some housekeeping. Malan, Cans, I don't know if you guys want to turn your videos on so people can see your faces in the meantime. There we go, the beautiful faces. So just to jump in, some housekeeping before we actually start the session. So just note, this is a webinar format that we're using. So you guys can see us, but we can't see you. Not creepy at all. There's also a Q&A feature at the bottom in the webinar format where you can please pose all your questions to Malan and we'll try our best to get to it throughout the session. Just to note, we're also going to be turning on your mics so you guys can ask the questions directly to Malan, make it a bit more personal. There is also a chat feature at the bottom. Please, please, please feel free to use this, engage, banter, and share any useful links that could help during the session. Also to note, if for some reason you drop off, please join via the same email link you received. And also we're going to be sending you guys some feedback post-event. Please, please feel free to share any thoughts, feedback, and your general experience for the event. So before we jump into the Q&A session, as mentioned, while we wait for some more people to join, we're at about 82 at the moment. We're going to have just a little poll to kind of gauge who the audience is at the moment. So you guys will see on your screen a little pop-up will appear. Feel free to tackle those questions. We'll give you guys about a minute just to go through it, share your thoughts with us. Cans, Malan, I don't know if you guys can see the answers, but feel free to comment as it goes along. Okay, so it seems like microservices. Oh wait, no, it's changing very quickly.
I can't see. Oh, no, I can only see questions.
Oh, it's because you're a panelist. So you're just going to have to vote.
I don't have. Okay, sudo poll. Doesn't work.
I mean, it's close. It's monoliths versus microservices. Like, it's quite close there. Right? No, it's changing. Never mind. I feel like I shouldn't comment.
Back and forth.
It seems like most people in the audience get requests to build their app ideas very, very, very often. You guys must be popular within your friend groups who have all the ideas.
I love how like Visual Studio is just like totally winning out though as the favorite code editor right now.
Yeah, JetBrains is coming along, but no way, not that close yet.
Microsoft is great at tooling. Like you can say a lot about them, but they are amazing at tooling.
I think it also says a lot about what the devs in the room are using at the moment. Like Microsoft.
Yeah.
Okay, banking. Oh, we've got some FNB. FNB's winning. Vestec close behind. It's nice to see. And we've got some other, there's a lot of others.
What the heck is Coda? I never know Coda.
These are what people have told me, have suggested. Oh, we got some Notepad++ for the win. Okay, I'm going to give it like another 10 seconds. About 70 of you guys have voted. Make sure to get your answers in.
Wow, we're up to 103 people. Nice, guys.
And it's just climbing. Okay. Okay, awesome. I think we're going to leave it at that. We don't want to take too much time into the Q&A, so I'm just going to end the poll. For those of you guys, just for the answers, so it seems like efficient microservice was the winner. Microservices were the winner. Too many of you guys have received requests to build app ideas. Favorite code editor, the winner's Visual Studio Code. Nice there.
By like 55%, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's quite impressive. And then the main banks, it's kind of split across, but it seems like FNB is the winner over there this week, which is quite cool. Okay, awesome. Oops. I just go next. So now that we're about 106 people, and I'm sure we can expect, obviously that's climbing more, I'm not even going to comment on the number anymore. So I'm going to hand over to Candice. Candice is the events producer / extraordinaire at OfferZen, and she's going to be handling the Q&A session with Malan. So Cans, I'm going to hand over to you, and I hope you guys all enjoy the session.
Awesome, thanks Alex. So hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm very, very excited to officially introduce Malan, who was very involved in some FinTech, or at the founding of FinTech companies SnapScan and Luno, although right now his focus is very much on OfferZen, and who has recently partnered with Investec to start making programmable banking like really a reality for the South African tech community. So hello Malan officially, and welcome to our virtual Fireside chat. So to get us started, for those of us who don't quite know too much about you yet, could you give us like a brief introduction as to how you got into this absolutely crazy wild world of tech?
Just to clarify, do you mean like startup-y businesses or like programming?
Both. I think that would be very interesting to the audience to know.
Okay, I think mostly, if any of you guys, I think UCT had a similar thing, but when like Stellenbosch University had a iNet key, it was called back in the day, which enabled you to access said internet. And my friend's dad worked at the university, so he had one of these mythical access things. And our like holy grail was building a keylogger to steal his login credentials for that. So that was one of the first software projects I did. So it was basically internet access was the thing. And then building robots. So basically those two things, access to internet and robots, was like my primary driver in life at school. And because of the robots thing, I did quite a lot of like embedded stuff, assembler, C, all of that kind of stuff. And that is mildly related to sort of lower level coding and security. So I realized like literally my logic when I want to build robots. I kind of, to do that, it seems you need money because the parts are expensive. So I probably need to do business things, and the embedded stuff was close-ish to security. So started building security things, and sort of that converted at some point into business things. And then that escalated into more than tech startup thing. But that's basically, goal function was build robots. First step was kind of collect money. It's basically like underpants gnomes strategy of startups. And that was basically how I got in.
Awesome, I love that. Also, underpants gnomes, that's an interesting concept. I haven't actually heard about it before. I'm assuming it's a
South
thing?
Park. If you go South Park, underpants gnomes.
Okay, cool. I will definitely check that out. So do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about what your team is kind of focusing on right now, and about your team and the kinds of problems your company, like OfferZen, is solving?
Right. Well, some of our team are you
yes.
doing events things. So that's a bit of a cheat today. So mostly what we're doing, for those who don't know, is trying to, from a developer perspective, I guess, helping people who code software kind of like get connected to cool jobs, careers, like problems to build things. And on the company side, the flip is like help side of that is like help them build awesome tech teams. I guess the one thing that might not be obvious to people is like humans and software developers don't change jobs that frequently. So most of the stuff we do is actually like something like this, which has nothing to do with changing jobs or getting a job. It's more just like learning about building software and cool things. So quite a lot of our focus goes into that, in case you guys were wondering.
Awesome. And can you also maybe like paint a brief picture about the kind of thing that you are personally like focusing on and caring about right now, especially now during this time?
So I'm spending a reasonable amount of time actually reading up and trying to figure out on the economics of COVID, like what has happened in previous times like this, let's say in the Great Depression, which I think is unfortunately one of the comparisons, trying to figure out what will happen maybe, like, or at least I've like knowing what will happen is hard, but finding smart people who seem to have a good idea of what will happen and reading about that. So trying to do like things like that, and I guess also talking to people in our community and our customers to figure out how they're seeing things, where they're struggling, and then sort of building out for OfferZen, I guess, what we can do to help our community and ourselves kind of get to how the world's going to end up in a kind of a I don't quite know if anything's going to be easy in these times, but at least in a less painful way.
Okay, and
which is new for me. Like economic stuff is quite new for me, so that is kind of an interesting world.
What are you doing to like make sure that you're looking at the right sort of resources and learning the right sort of stuff versus focusing on the wrong sort of stuff?
So the one really good bit of advice I saw was from Patrick Collison from Stripe on that. And his thing was like, if you want to learn about a thing, try and go for the source material, like the original reference, and ideally something that's been proven out. So let's say an example is in management in technology companies. The ex-Intel CEO's book, High Output Management, is a pretty safe bet, because like Intel is a technology company that has survived for decades. And it's like a lot of things that came afterwards was based on that idea. So for example, like a thing that's more questionable is, let's say you want to see how to learn how to build a business looking at WeWork a year ago. Like it isn't obvious if it's a good or a bad thing. It's turned out to be a bad thing, but they have just like not enough time has passed to know if you should be learning lessons from them. So taking the root things helps a lot. So I try and think about that a lot. So an example on the economics thing is I'm actually reading like, it's like the longest book ever. It's taking me forever, but I'm working through Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, which is a few hundred years old, but it has stood the test of time. So that's the one trick, is just go to the source, like the original source. And then the other thing is just finding, like, it's easier to judge if someone else is super smart, like much easier than to be smart yourself. So kind of just trying to figure out who seems smart in this thing and just asking them. Like people tend to be pretty friendly, or they just blog and you can just read it. So those two, like figure out who the smart people are and what they're learning from, and look at the source references. Both of those seem to work pretty well.
I love that. And especially like I always find people are actually way more friendly online if you reach out than you expect them to be. So you can definitely get that kind of help.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you've got to dig. If you guys don't know, like Candace has to every now and then try and find people to come to a conference in South Africa or whatever, and pinging people all across the world. So it's like it's interesting to, like, if you just email someone with like a handwritten email, like people respond and come all the way to South Africa.
Definitely, it blows my mind.
Not anymore, I guess, not for the next while, but when they can get airline tickets.
Yeah, eventually, at least online now. So just like also to the same point that you're saying, like what you guys, what we're focusing now at OfferZen. So based on the changes, what is like the team's focus or priority right now to keep the business alive and thriving?
Mm-hmm. So we're thinking about it, or at least I'm thinking about it on 3 levels. So the first most important thing was like, it's a little bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs for a company. So the most important thing is like, let's call it safety and security, which can mean physical security, health, psychological safety, whatever you like, all of those things. So just everyone being okay, if you will. So like just going fully remote is quite a shock. So what we did is, we're fortunate enough that we had like remote work weekly, like we had a remote day a week. So we were kind of used to that. And we realized probably lockdowns are going to happen. So actually before it happened to us, we started going full remote. And things like that helped us for the initial shock not to be so bad, but like helping people make sure everyone's got really like proper internet, things like that, making sure that the team still are connected, people feel connected, things like that was step one. So just making sure everyone is okay, because you can't do much if you're not okay. So once and we're now almost 100 people at OfferZen. I think we're 93 in the team now. So it's quite a lot of people to just make sure everyone's okay. And the next step is then I think to be, let's call it like effective. So just being able to do your job, like the normal stuff you do in this new reality, and do it well, keep connected, all of that. So I think there our team has like done a super great job and everything, but it's like just sort of being able to do the basics, being able to execute. And then I think the thing I was saying now around, like earlier around, like looking at where we think things are going to be and how to get there, that's the third thing. So like first being okay, then being able to execute, and then deciding, okay, where are you going? That's sort of how I'm thinking about it.
Why in that exact order? Like what is the impact of focusing in those things in that way?
So I think it's like obvious that you kind of want to be secure first, or safe, right? So that's like easy to say, okay, first do that, otherwise you can't do much. I think you could argue you should first have a plan right before you do things, but practically I found like it's very demotivating to not be able to just do things firstly. So just being able to say, cool, starting off, we just do our business as usual in this new setting. That's like really good for the first step, which is like sanity and health and everything. So that helps there. And then the other reason I think for it is, on some level, it's not like the world is changing in an instant. It's different, but a lot of the old things are still around. Like our community, there's like things we need to do there. We've got customers, they want things from us, we need to support them. So just we like have a job to do. So step one is do it, and then look at what is changing. So that's at least I've been thinking about it.
And how do you how does it impact the team having this sort of plan, even though, like you say, it's hard to have a plan, but like this way of thinking, how have you seen it impact the way people work and show up, I suppose?
So I think in general, obviously, like having a plan is nice. Like people like certainty and direction. If you think like how many people were shouting at our president to just like, hey, tell us what the plan is. Like it's like we like to know what the thing is. It's like it's just that it's human nature. So I think often the trick is balancing like wanting a plan with the fact that things change. So there's that nice, like, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. I think it's Mike Tyson quote. And so ideally you want to like have the idea that there is a plan. You do a lot of planning, but the plan itself can change and adapt.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that way of thinking.
Matthew says it is definitely Mike Tyson. Cool.
Yeah, I think Anna has it up in the office somewhere where you can see it. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. So I wanted to ask, what sort of like, especially now with all the changes and the uncertainty, like there are obviously a lot of people who are a little bit scared and a little bit worried, but I know you talk a lot about the opportunities. What sort of opportunities do you see going forward for the tech and maybe even the FinTech community specifically?
So, I think, okay, so like predictions are hard, right? So yeah. I think like what is safe to say? So I think what was the fact is before COVID hit, like companies were moving to more and more, call it like digital tech enabled things, like more automation, more like online services, blah, blah, blah. So there was a trend there. So the way I'm thinking about it is to say, okay, like there's some small, completely new things that will happen now, like vaccine research is just going to like skyrocket, let's say, blah, blah, blah. There's some whole new types of things that are coming. But I think overall, I'm thinking of COVID as like a fast forward button for like a digital transformation. So I'm basically thinking, okay, what digital trends were already in motion? What happens if they get accelerated? That's basically how I'm thinking about it. So let's say remote work was a trend. I don't think everyone's going to be working remotely a year from now, but definitely more people than before, and sort of on an exponential curve. So I think it's things like that I'm thinking, like what is going to be accelerated, and it's such rapid acceleration that it really looks like in some sectors, I think, like a whole new thing, whole new opportunities. And I think financial services is probably a good example where regulation and things have like held things back for quite long, and COVID is just like running over that. Like I've had so many dealings with, let's say, banks and insurance companies where they always insist on what they call wet ink signatures, right? It's a stupid example, but the lawyers firmly believe that if it's not a pen on paper signature, it's not valid, you know? I mean, ironically, you could fax it and then it's still okay, but suddenly that is okay. Like that's the first time ever we're able to like use HelloSign to sign proper agreements with the bank and stuff, and it's all okay. So it's like a small example, but I think those kind of things are happening now, and that actually like added up. All of those small things make quite a difference. And then obviously on a macro scale, like let's say Root is what I can chat with Lo. He's on here week before yesterday actually, but he said the retailers in South Africa, like their shops are closed or have been closed for a while, but they're accelerating their trends to digital services that they're selling quite a lot. So Root's helping them on some of the insurance offerings, but all of the things they can, you know, they're moving much faster. That sort of multi-year timelines are shrinking down to literally weeks. So I think that's like an example of what I'm guessing is going to happen.
Okay.
Or is happening actually.
How do you make sure, like, especially when things are changing so fast and they are so uncertain, you can't really like make a plan, how do you make sure to take these opportunities when they like hit your doorstep, you know, like?
So I'm not sure if you have to like make sure you take them. That's maybe the one contrarian view. So first step is just being okay and being able to function, right? The other thing, with the one nice thing with technology is it's kind of like it's a game that's rigged but in your favor. Okay, so it's kind of like let's call it gambling at a casino, but in your favor, in that statistically you'll win if you keep playing and trying things, and generally success in a technology enabled business can be really big. So you kind of only need to, as I say, get lucky or win once. Okay, so it's okay if you miss some things, as long as, or you pick things that don't quite work out. You just like at least once have to, or like, you know, very infrequently have to get things right. So that's kind of counterintuitive, but I think in a time like this, it's easy to go, firstly panic, and then because like trying not to die, and then on this side, panicking because you're missing all of the opportunity maybe or whatever. But I think it's more like picking a single thing that you believe in that will be impactful if it works out, and kind of like putting in that effort. And then if it doesn't work out, making, you know, setting yourself up so that you survive that and you can try the next thing and kind of have that patience. At least that's what I try and do, because I generally, the specific things I try or guess are generally wrong. That's like about the one thing I'm sure of is I'm wrong on a specific thing, but over time and trying enough things, it sort of seems to even out.
I love that. And also like it very much applies to like the growth mindset of like seeing what you can learn from the things you do and learning from that to inform like your next decisions, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. It's like you don't want to come away empty-handed. You don't have to have a victory, but you do want to have learning.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's that, I think that was actually Nelson Mandela's thing. It's like, you know, either I win or I learn.
Awesome. Okay, so we're almost out of time for our interview portion of this evening. But before we dive into audience questions, I thought it would be nice if you could share one thing that you realized in your career about like what it takes to win in the tech industry.
To win. So I guess the one thing is it generally doesn't require you to beat anyone. which is not that like, so it's a positive sum game, I think, like, because you're making new things. So that's maybe one thing. It's not, at least it wasn't obvious to me initially. Like there's a lot of like business like as war type of analogies and thinking and strategy books. So that's like one thing. It's like you can like winning in business. It's a positive sum game. So doesn't have to be at the expense of someone else. And it's generally you can build a better business if you're not trying to do it at the expense of. This is like one thing, but I think in terms of like the most useful thing I've learned or realized for myself is that curiosity is a pretty good hack for many of the aspects. Like it's a good hack for shyness. It's a good hack for sales, surprisingly. I mean, it's a good hack for coding and learning. So it's like I definitely underrated like curiosity and the idea that you can like nurture that as a personality attribute or habit or whatever you want to call it. So I'd say like that's the one thing I was like, if I go back, I was like, I'd write myself a little manual, like firstly like titled "Be More Curious," and then a few steps on like this is how you cultivate that habit, because it feels like it's pretty close to a panacea, like a solve all of your problems in building tech businesses.
It's so cool. I wish there was a machine like that you could just, send it back to yourself in time and teach yourself these lessons. Okay, cool. So I think it would be really cool if we could open up the Q&A to the audience, but I think some people joined after the initial explanation. So I just want to ask everybody that if you have some questions, please will you like pop them in the Q&A. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A portion. So if you could just pop them over there and then we'll get through them, and I'll maybe unmute you if you want to be unmuted to ask your question to Malan. But I think Anthea, you had a question. Let me just unmute you quickly. Would you like to answer or ask your first question there? Anthea, you just need to unmute yourself.
There are many interesting questions here.
Yes, there are. Okay, Anthea seems to be having some trouble.
Am I allowed to pick random questions and just say them and answer them?
You're more than welcome to. Yes, you can do that. Just read them out loud so people know which one you're answering.
So I think the one thing that's interesting also, I'll just pick Anthea because you started picking her, is how do you approach prototypes in the FinTech area when there are more strict regulations as well as expectations from users? So I guess that's like the standard thing is if you're working with people's money, they kind of like get sad if you lose it, or angry, or the government gets sad / angry at you. Okay, that's like the basic problem with financial services is you like firstly often like screw ups can be very costly / fundamental, like can kill you, and the other part of it is some things you just can't do, or like legally you've got to like spend a lot of time on the regulation side. One way that I found to do prototypes is to be comfortable with the idea that you cannot safeguard everything. So an example is, let's say with Root actually. Okay, so you're processing insurance premiums and it's pretty complicated and mistakes can be like really bad and you can lose money. The thing we did that was the way the team approached it, which I thought was pretty good, is they said, okay, like let's take a pool of money and put it aside. And it wasn't that much money. It was less than sort of one person's single month salary. And they put it and said, okay, that is a pool of money. We put it in an account. And then instead of trying to make sure we're not making any mistakes, we build a few simpler systems that just monitor totals, effectively rate limiting for risk, and make sure that at any given time, the total risk in the system is less than that money. And that often proves to be much, much easier to build than an entire kind of like a very safe system. Which is a similar thing with SnapScan or whatever. We just want to say, I call it an envelope. Put an envelope on the risk or money at risk. And that can buy you a heck of a lot of time. And you often find the money you risk, and A, you almost never lose it. And B, even if you lose it, it still tends to be a lot cheaper than the time it would take to like do it properly. And I think ethically, you don't want to, like, you shouldn't, like, can't, whatever you want to call it, like, must never do that with like your users' money. So it's a nice way where you can take risks, but it's on you in a bounded way, and not on your users. So that's like the one trick I've done. It's like a risk envelope, put a pool, rate limit risk or volume or whatever through the system. That works surprisingly well. Okay.
Awesome.
Joshua asked, would you say your initial success at the beginning was due to programming skills or due to business acumen? So it's like there was a lot of failure before any form of success. So it's like, firstly, the initial failure was like due to lack of both. I think in terms of hitting success, it's probably more useful to like be able to make something, i.e. programming skills. At least for me, I find it more useful than the business side. And then once again, you can sort of short circuit the business side with curiosity. I found that's like a pretty good hack. So I would, if I had to say, I would think my initial stuff was more around the ability to make something than to have like some smart business instead. I'm not sure I have that now. Certainly didn't have it then.
Could you maybe give just an example of that? An example of where being curious has been really useful to you instead of having this like business acumen?
Well, I mean, what's an example?
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No. There are many. Okay, so let's say, I'm trying to think what's a good example. There are many examples. It's hard to pick one. So, okay, let me just randomly pick one. With Root, that like originally we had no plans to do anything in insurance, and someone from MMI, sort of Metropolitan and Momentum, like Jonathan, who's now at Root, asked me a bunch of questions around like trends in insurance and whatnot. And I was just like pretty curious about like how he's thinking about it and what they're doing. And so just like being curious about it eventually led down a whole path that became Root. So it wasn't like we had this plan of like disrupting the insurance industry or anything like that. It was like curiosity that eventually became a plan. But it wasn't like a plan at all, really. And I think you can pretty much say that of any of the business, at least I've been involved in, it's like starts with curiosity.
That's a great example.
Someone, Jeff, asked to us, still do any coding, or is your time spent mainly running businesses? And if you still code, is it mainly prototyping? So like, I think it has been really, really, really long since I've put in a pull request at OfferZen, like absurdly long ago. And I think that like makes me a little bit sad. But I definitely realized it's like pretty irritating from the development team's point of view if you're sort of half in the team. So you'll write code, but you're not there to maintain it or whatever, and if you're doing other things, and so that can get really irritating. So I realized, like, don't do that. So if I do spend time coding, it's generally not for work. It might be a little script here or there, but it's definitely never production product stuff at this point. I think you can be CEO and do that, but then you need to make sure you've got allocated time properly boxed for that. So it's a lot like just stuff on my own if I play around, evening or a weekend type side project stuff.
Masood had an interesting question there.
Yes.
Asking, what is the best way to get hired by a FinTech company? Is there a specific programming language that would benefit you in learning, like Python?
I think in terms of specific programming languages, I don't know off the top of my head. It's going to depend on the kind of work you do or want to do. So let's say Python is probably not a bad idea at all if you're interested in data science kind of work, which is a big aspect at many FinTech companies, but a lot of them also, it's like, let's say, use Java backends and stuff. So I would almost work backwards from the thing you want to be doing. And then at least that's how I learned programming and languages. Generally, I had a problem I wanted solved or a project I wanted to build, and then went backwards to do it. So like an example is for OfferZen, we sort of wanted to build a thing, and I, on a whim, decided it's a good opportunity to learn Ruby and Ruby on Rails framework. So that was my excuse to learn Ruby on Rails. So I think that's, I mean, I don't know if that's great career advice. I think it's a good way of learning things. But you can also, like if you want to check out stuff, you can check out on OfferZen website. We've got a list of companies. You can actually go to a company and see what tech stacks they use. That's like one thing. And there's also, we've got some surveys out that says what they do, or just ask them. Just kind of like, if they've got job ads out or whatever, ping the recruiter and ask them how they think about it. So someone asked if I ended up building a robot. I actually did. I did. I built a whole swarm of them. I built five little track robots.
What did they do?
Well, they kind of drove around. They were named after the characters in the movie Blade Runner. And it was really around being a swarm and trying to figure out how they can, in a decentralized way, kind of make decisions. Like, which oddly enough, I try and apply at OfferZen in terms of like kind of having distributed decision making and autonomy. Like a lot of that comes from building robots. So a lot of the robot stuff I did was copied off like how insects collaborate, like swarm theory, boids, that kind of stuff.
I love how you get the ideas from nature to make tech. Okay, do you have one?
Oh, there's so many questions.
Yeah, there are tons of questions. I can just pick one from.
So where's it asked on thoughts on Bitcoin halving? I have no idea, honestly. Like, there's Bitcoin, the protocol, which makes sense to me. Bitcoin, kind of like in terms of the community and stuff, I have like it's never made sense to me since the start. Like, I just have no idea how to predict what on earth that a community will do and what the price will do. So I don't know. I am getting really interested though on the kind of the new proof of stake, fully programmable Turing complete blockchain stuff that's coming out now. That is looking very, very interesting.
Awesome. So Mike Joubert also had a question. He said, what do you think the scope for creating tech business opportunities from rehashing existing business processes using rubbish tech versus newly invented unicorn solutions is? So what's the scope for creating a business out of that?
Wait, okay, let me just, this is hard.
It's Mike Joubert.
Yeah, it's creating tech business opportunities from rehashing existing. So if I understand the question correctly, I think that as a developer, I've often overrated the importance of like the tech complexity or elegance or whatever. So you can get surprisingly far with pretty dumb tech stuff, at least initially. I think so. I'm trying to think what are good examples, but like a lot of shiny tech businesses get a lot of press, but there's like an absurd amount of like true value created in the world in pretty boring stuff that's like mildly tech enabled, let's say, but it's not like rocket science level things. I mean, there's obviously a place for like really deep tech as well, but I think it's increasingly becoming like a basic sane business process, business idea enabled with robust, sane, some like non-funky tech, like a monolith, whatever, doing its thing, just solving the problem, rather than going nuts.
Awesome. Here's another one that I can ask you. I'm not sure who sent it. It's a weird number, but Malan, how do you rate the quality of our South African developers? With the current exchange rates, are there opportunities to offshore our skills remotely? We don't want people packing up and leaving.
That is a good question. So the one nice thing with South Africa and the rand, our currencies, is like we get sad, like South Africans get very sad if the rand devalues, but it does mean effectively we whatever we export is like we get a lot more, we get paid a lot more for it. So that's like pretty cool. It's like a pretty cool like feedback loop. So like we definitely have high quality developers. I think that's easy to say. I mean, it's like you can point at many examples. One of my favorites is probably AWS. That's like all the initial stuff was done in Cape Town, and still have a very large, not still, they have a very large team in Cape Town and they're growing it. So it's just like a nice example. I think there are many. So definitely the tech is world class. I suspect that opportunity for, call it like exporting our skills is increasing. Whether we like sell our time, like do remote work for like effectively like contracting dev, or whether it is that we build technology business like products that are sold overseas, I think it'll be both. Oh, yeah, Michael. So I think it'll be both. And definitely that, call it arbitrage, has increased. Like we've got super high quality skill. When we're not in lockdown, it's like an awesome place to live, all of that stuff. So I think that will increase quite a lot. It has, like that is a trend that will increase.
Awesome. I really like this question from Jason Wallace. He said, how do you spend your day and how do you split your time between OfferZen and other stuff?
Well, at the moment, my day's quite hectic. Let me just see what my calendar looks like, then I won't lie on how I spend it. So I spend my day indoors. That's a start.
Yeah.
So if I look at today, I had, so it's mostly OfferZen. I had a meeting with an advisor for an hour and a half in the morning, basically trying to figure out a lot of the questions we were asking now, specifically on how do we basically generate more foreign income for like development income, self-development income in South Africa, like what are strategies around that. Then I did preparations for sync up with the Office of the Presidency. Then I chatted with our finance team around some of the international expansion work we're doing. Then, our meeting, then the actual presidency brief, then prep for this. So that was my day. And I have a check-in with Philip, my brother / co-founder, after this till 8 o'clock. So that is like mostly OfferZen stuff, and it gives you a rough idea of my day. I try and every now and then, as much as I can, schedule slots in where I can do reading or thinking or stuff, which today didn't have that much time for.
And why do you try to do that? Like, what's the benefit in taking that time for yourself?
Well, I guess everyone knows the benefit. Like, we know we want to learn,
yeah.
blah, blah, blah. I guess it's more, how do you justify taking that time? I don't know if you agree, right? Like, I mean, you okay, it's like, yeah, it's useful. So it's like, okay, how do you do that in the week? I find I kind of just have to make it a habit. Like in the moment, I find it very hard when things are burning to go that. So I mostly think about how do I make it easier to do. So let's say like I have a list of things ready to read, a book, like, and I kind of set it up, try and set up slots for that. So those are
awesome.
Okay.
So I think we have maybe time for one last question. Do you want to find one that you think will be fun?
So there's a question from Lydia: which fintech companies are winning in our current context? Why them, and what are they doing differently? So that is like a really, really interesting question, because it's not that obvious to me, or like I didn't predict well. So some obvious things like e-commerce does well. That seems to be, so if it's an e-commerce thing, that does well, but that also means fintech companies that enable that in whatever way do well. What I've seen is, let's say, companies like that enable, let's say, funds to be managed are doing well now because of increased volatility in the market and things like there's more of a requirement there. So that's a less intuitive thing. So I think any kind of fintech thing related to share trading, Forex, any of those things globally seems to be doing well. I think anything that is any fintech kind of company that allows offline kind of real world things to go digital is going to do well. So like practically, I know Root is like insanely busy. They're just trying to keep up with all of the people phoning them and stuff. But I think they're not special in that sense. Anyone doing that kind of facilitating that fast forward button, basically, it's like anyone that's at the other end of that fast forward button is probably doing well at this point.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I'm afraid that's all that we actually have time for tonight. But
So
I want to
maybe one important thing. Ryan is asking who's the person running the InvestTech initiative and how do we contact him? It's actually her. Her name's Davina. She is head of digital and InvestTech. Ryan, if you want, you can drop me an email and I can figure out what you want to do or whatever, and I'll try and make sure you either get connected to Davina or whoever. So I'll just put it in there. Cool.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. And also thank you so much, Malan, for taking the time out of your very, very busy schedule to chat to all of us today.
No problem.
I think it was a very interesting conversation. It was really nice to find out more about you and your background. I also just really want to say thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us today. I think it was nice, really, really cool engagement, some really awesome questions. I'm so sorry we didn't get to them all, but hopefully we can make a plan with them sometime in the future to get them answered. I also just want to take the opportunity to thank InvestTech for being our sponsor tonight and making it possible for us to really gather together and really have this conversation. And I also just want to let you all know that right after the webinar closes, you guys will get a notification to give us some feedback. Feedback is really, really important to us for making these events better. And we really want all your opinions about how we can really bring the events that you really need. So thank you, everybody. And we hope to see you at our next event.
Just awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Bye.